As always, a lot going on today. We are going to have Kari Lake in here in about a half an hour or so. Of course, she's a candidate in Arizona. But first, we have Jack Posobiec hopefully coming by. You can follow him on X at Jack Posobiec, Posobiec. The book is Bulletproof: The Truth About the Assassination Attempts on Donald Trump. And his co-author, Joshua Lisek, joins me. First off, you can follow him on X at Joshua Lisek, Lisec. A lot to get into today as we're running down to this election. People are getting nutty all over the place. So we'll get into it after this.
Our laws, as it pertains to substances, are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous.
I'm a doctor, for sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that?
I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want to help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say.
Joint muscle pains are exhausting and frustrating, but I've got a over-the-counter medication I want to introduce you to that provides great relief using the power of, check it out, chili peppers. Capsodin is made with a proprietary formula that contains no non-steroidal anti-inflammatory agents, no opioids, no anesthetic or steroid, nothing, no chance for addiction, no side effects. No chance it's going to interact with other medication you might be taking. Capsodin contains capsaicin, which is the substance in chili peppers that burns your tongue. That gives you that burny feeling. And of course, I've recommended capsaicin creams to patients over the years, but other capsaicin creams burn your skin. That's what makes Capsodin so unique. In clinical trials, Capsodin has actually been demonstrated not to burn.
I've been using Capsodin to relieve my pain in my hands and my wrist from carpal tunnel syndrome and arthritis. The results have been amazing. I use it every day during my show, and I highly recommend it.
Get the pain relief you need from various sources, even backache, sprains, bruises even. Order now at capsodin.com/Drew to get a 15% discount plus free shipping. That is CAPSADYN, capsodin.com/DREW. As I said, Kari Lake coming in a few minutes, KARILAKE on X. But right now, the man of the hour is Joshua Lisek. Joshua, thanks for joining us.
Hello, Dr. Drew. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you. And I did not know about your background in persuasion and hypnosis, but you're just the man for the present hour, because this fascinates me greatly. I heard your interview with Scott Adams. I did not know you were involved in Win Bigly, which now has a new edition coming out, so congratulations on that. But most of you are here to talk about the book you did with Jack Posobiec, Bulletproof. Give us a little sketch of that before we go on.
We began writing this book, Bulletproof, minutes, barely hours after the first assassination attempt there on July 13th, a Saturday, at 6:11 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. I was sitting in a restaurant. I got text message, and I look at it, and I see, what's this all about? Oh no, heart sinks when you begin to open up the app, and you see messages, you see videos, you see clips of all of this going down. And then I go over to the mainstream media to see, wait a second, is this being reported elsewhere? And headlines read, Trump falls on stage, firecrackers heard nearby. And I realized they were burying history. They were creating fake history in real time, just minutes after the world witnessed an assassination attempt. And my inner thought was, no, not on my watch. We're not doing that. And Jack Posobiec, who was my co-author on the previous book called Unhumans, it was a New York Times bestseller, we wanted to get the gang back together to make sure that the public would not be allowed to forget this story. Because immediately after it happened, it was buried by the media, even to the point that now Google does not, as far as we are aware, doesn't report searches per month, average searches per month for anything associated with the assassination attempts. It shows, the software that I use for SEO shows 0 searches per month. Meanwhile, Trump News has like 3.2 million, Trump Updates has 1.8 million, and Trump Shooting has 0? I don't think so. So there seems to be a collective effort to bury this.
Well, it's interesting. I want to bring up another example of how this was done during the pandemic, but you mentioned bringing the team back together. Let's do exactly that right now. Jack Posobiec is here. Bring him on in with us. Jack, welcome back.
Dr. Drew, thanks so much for having me back on.
So, for either of you guys, I don't know if you remember, I was talking to to Adam Carolla about this today, about how they dealt with things like ivermectin. You know, and you had physicians and journalists and all sorts of people from a variety of backgrounds having oversized opinions about a drug they essentially had just learned how to pronounce the name of. And the physicians were twisting themselves into pretzels to make it sort of okay what the press was saying. The reality is they should have gone, I don't know, I've never heard of this drug before. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Talk to your doctor. Instead, it's like, oh my God. And they had to bury anybody that made a case for ivermectin. Do you remember all that? It seems like the same playbook to me, Jack.
That's exactly right. And so anyone who doesn't have the official narrative, anyone who's putting out more information than we should, is immediately buried. Keep in mind, Dr. Drew, that we even had the FBI director himself went in front of the House, and we detail this in the book, and spread a conspiracy theory that President Trump wasn't even shot. That, in fact, it was shrapnel, this shrapnel hoax, that he had been hit from one of the teleprompters. When anyone can see the video, and of course the entire world has seen the video, the teleprompters are perfectly intact. No bullet hit these things. And so you see this concerted effort, for some reason, from members of the official government to say that what you saw with your own eyes didn't actually happen. Now, that one specifically, it just didn't hold up in the face of evidence and, quite frankly, in the face of reality, which is the same thing that happened with stuff like ivermectin or things like the lockdowns and social distancing and masks, and people eventually pushed beyond them. With things like the assassination attempt, initially we were told it was fireworks, that President Trump had taken a fall, that perhaps the bullet wasn't real, but there will still be, and I actually did an interview yesterday with someone who, you know, he's I'll say this, he's not really politically aligned with a Trump supporter, even though he's much more open to Trump than someone who's on like the far left, if you will. But he said, look, and he's in California, he said, I talk to people every day who tell me that Donald Trump was not shot, that it was staged, that it was fake, and we walked through every element of these hoaxes.
Well, let me ask this then. This a little more towards Joshua, because he's the Persuasion trained individual here. It feels like this same playbook we just mentioned, two of the sort of attempts to crush the truth, essentially. It feels like those playbooks have been underway for about 8 years. And the public, Joshua, I think it's like the playbook has been opened and we can see it now. So when they try this stuff, the public goes, oh, really? You can try that again? There's a lot of ho-hum to this nonsense, and people then go on X and try to figure things out for themselves. But is it not the case that they have sort of exhausted the playbook?
That's right. A number of attempts to bring down Donald Trump and slow down the Make America Great Again populist movement have proven unsuccessful. It seems like everything they've thrown at him hasn't stuck, it hasn't worked. And then following the debate, it was clear that Joe Biden was not going to be a serious candidate this year. And it seems like some pretty interesting timing that barely 2 weeks after that is this assassination attempt, immediately prior to the RNC convention, the Republican National Convention, and the selection of Trump's vice presidential pick. If there was a time to try to end the movement once and for all, it was going to be then and there, during that period after it was clear that the Biden perfect mental clarity, sharp as attack, that conspiracy theory, it was disproven in front of the public, and there was mass panic. And of course, there had been a number of comments made by Democratic leadership that we believe was effectively incitement to violence. There was talking about using words like killing, talking about putting Trump in a bullseye. Reid Hoffman is reported as joking that he wished Trump had been made an actual martyr. rather than a metaphorical one in order to create sympathy. And it's not just recently in the months and weeks prior to the shooting, but going back many, many years. And it certainly seems to those of us who are paying attention that the intent was to motivate a mentally unstable yet capable marksman to try to commit the ultimate sin against Donald Trump himself. And that is exactly what we witnessed. There he was 140 yards away, able to take 8 shots. And the strangest thing about it is that was the perfect place for a would-be assassin to be positioned. Same as with Ryan Wesley Ruth a couple of months later. They're on the golf course, hiding there by the chain link fence right outside, covered up by brush and having kind of his own tactical battlefield situation. They are perfectly positioned, both of them, to do what they wanted to do here. And both of them seem to have been motivated by that threat to democracy, literally Hitler language. Donald Trump himself, following the FBI victim briefing that he had shared, and this was reported initially by Breitbart, he described Thomas Matthew Crooks, the Butler shooter, as, quote, very liberal, unquote, which is completely different from what the mainstream media is reporting, that there was no known motive, no known political motive. We'll just never know. Oh, well, next story, Trump's literally Hitler, Puerto Rico jokes,
Right.
and they're on to the next thing.
You know, Joshua, the first time I ever heard the term Trump derangement syndrome, and then abbreviated as TDS, was our mutual friend Scott Adams. I'm wondering if you had something to do with that, since you're sort of a co-persuasion geek with him. And I want to share with you, I listen to French radio every morning because I'm just sort of, I'm trying to get my language, gelled with that language, and I'm fascinated by their political thing. I don't know if you guys are watching it, but it's a mess, and it's kind of fun to watch. But I'm listening, and the announcer for Radio Sud is going, "Nous avons vu le Trump derangement syndrome," and I was like, "Oh my God, it has gone over the Atlantic, and they're using the English word Trump derangement syndrome in France." And I'm certain it's not the only country that's hearing it. But is that you, Joshua, that did that?
I like to joke that Scott Adams does all of his own stunts. I came in after the initial burst of Trump derangement syndrome being a thing that people recognized as being real. But I will say that I was famously deprogrammed by Scott Adams, formerly an anti-Trump guy that I was, used to be quite liberal. And it was Scott Adams, via his work on this topic, that changed my mind permanently about 5 years ago or so, very publicly and quite hilariously.
Interesting.
Yes, and it was, of course, using
That's
some of the
funny.
principles. Yes, and it was using some of the principles of hypnosis. Yeah.
And Jack, as we get into these final hours here, there were 2 psychologists that actually characterized the Trump derangement syndrome. She was a Canadian. Her husband is a quantitative psychologist, and they have actually documented what the risk factors are for it. They've defined it. It's kind of interesting. It's really gone past the persuasion world into the world of psychological sciences. But as we run into run up into the election, what are you worried about? What should we expect? How can we prepare ourselves for whatever either side does coming into next Tuesday?
Sure. Well, I'll just say that, on your previous comment there about French elections, I haven't been too involved in French politics since back in 2017 when I leaked Emmanuel Macron's campaign emails, and they were very upset with me when I did that right before their previous election.
Right. By the way, he's looking pretty good compared to Sarkozy and some of the other ones. He's looking pretty reasonable compared to Mélenchon, who's a nut.
Look at the French, man. Just give it to the French when it comes to their politics. But I'll say this, when it's our own election, I would say this, that I see something that's happening on the right where people are already pre-primed to view things as a fraud or as a steal. And one of the things that I've seen is people will just jump on something online and say, I'm going to share this because it's the next big thing. And, it might turn out to actually not be true. It might turn out to be an honest error, or it may be in some cases like there was the situation yesterday in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, which is very near my hometown, where there were actually people the security officers, or not even sure entirely who they were, but uniformed officers outside the polling place telling people they couldn't go out to vote, which was complete violation of state election law while we filmed them. And I was able to collect affidavits and get that to a lawyer. They sued in open court. There's now an injunction extending voting beyond that. So what I would just say to folks out there is, I get it. We need to look out for all this. We need to be vigilant. But at the same time, we also need to clarify and verify all of the things that we see out there. So when someone pops up and says, hey, I've got the next big thing and this is what's really going on, you have to be very careful, because number one, it could just be something that's completely honest error, could be a mistake, or potential for bad actors to get involved, we know has already happened.
Apparently, it even has a name. It's called like a Buffalo Run, if I remember that, which is like if you decided, I've got the Kraken, I'm releasing the Kraken. Here I see it. I got it.
Hey, Drew, can we quickly work with Jack's mic a little bit? It's crackly on this end, and it will not be a podcast if we don't address it really quick.
Okay. Caleb, you want to help us out with that while I go off about the Krakens? Which is that
I think he just needs to know it's coming through like really grainy and crackly.
Yeah.
Do you have...
Jack, you might just have to refresh the Zoom call, or just make sure that in Zoom you have the correct microphone selected, because we can barely hear you.
So we'll let Jack. Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
So
I
will say, Joshua, that people are they get very excited about things that really is frankly confirmation bias. Cognitive dissonance, cognitive distortions is alive and well, and you got to check yourself. It's you're as bad as anybody else. You want to be better. You want to be cautious, careful, check your sources. Be scientific. The scientific method is supposed to buttress us against the weaknesses in this instrument. But do you worry about the Buffalo runs yourself, Joshua?
I did previously, until there were a number of influencers on the right. For example, Joshua Steinman being one of them. He was an official in the first Trump administration. He and others like Mike Cernovich, like Jack Posobiec himself and Scott Adams began calling these tactics out and saying, wait a second, if it sounds exactly like the sort of thing that you would expect, maybe they're aware of that and maybe they push this.
Too on the nose. Too on the nose. If it's too much, they just go, I don't know. Yeah.
And understanding this confirmation bias, looking for reasons to believe this is the real deal, we had to be careful with research for Bulletproof, because the official story seems to be bunk. There's the least evidence is available to support that theory, but there are a number of other plausible scenarios. And so we laid it out. Funny enough, we did in the book a social experiment asking ChatGPT 4.0 what artificial intelligence believes is the likeliest explanation. And we said, okay, what are the odds of all of these so-called security failures all occurring all at once on the same day when most of them had not occurred before, much less simultaneously, and all of them occurring at exactly the same time that a trained marksman is 140 yards away? 1 in 1 septillion. That's the odds of that happening entirely by chance. And
1 in 1 septillion. Who calculated that for you? Speaking of being careful with your sources.
Yes, we had ChatGPT do that of all things. We laid out here's what we see, and we did not want to say
It's comical.
Here's a theory that we're going to weave. And so it's Microsoft, which is not exactly known for being a conservative organization, and ChatGPT is famous for producing left-wing aligned, leftist aligned output. And its analysis was, given the odds of all of these things occurring simultaneously, it begs the question if it was in fact all occurring independently, and there was not some prior organization between and among these individuals involved. And so that is, we're going up to the line of saying there was in fact an inside job here, but the odds are what they are. The probability is what it is, and we lay out all the math and we show the work that, and both the prompts and the output for ChatGPT with this hypothesis. And then Jack and I, we were both there in the front row for the second Butler rally, and everything was set up exactly as it was for the first one. And the first thing I noticed was how deep in the pocket of security Thomas Matthew Crooks had to have been, and yet he was seen that day walking around calmly, coolly, casually, confidently, even cocky. And he does not seem to be someone who's trying to hide. Despite having a rifle, despite having a rangefinder, he's going about his business. Not what you would expect of someone who's afraid of being caught. He does not act like someone who's afraid of being caught. And that gave me pause. And then seeing the way that the stands were arranged, that was really the only spot he could have had a clear shot at Donald Trump. And he would have had to have known how everything was going to be set up beforehand. And he would have had to have known there was not going to be a counter sniper watching him from his position to catch him.
Hey, Jack, I want to jump off the assassination book for just a second and talk about your website. Is that The Independent? Is that what it's called? Or is that just where you contribute? Is that yours?
We have the postmillennial and humanevents.com.
Okay. I found it a contribution of yours in any event. And in that, I just saw an interesting headline I wanted to ask you about. It was essentially that the moderate middle is a myth. And I thought, that's kind of an interesting thing to say. I consider myself middle, sort of radically middle, stuck in the middle, able to see the excesses on both sides. Am I kidding myself?
Well, I'll put it this way. When it comes to voting, we haven't seen a lot of moderate middle really be out there. When it comes to this, and people will talk about the sort of socially liberal, financially conservative voter. And when you plot that out on using exit polls, and when you plot that out in terms of voting, you're looking at maybe a tiny, tiny swath of the party in such a way that if either of the national parties, Republicans or the Democrats, were attempting to construct their policies to really fit that type of voter, you're just not going to see it there. The electorate doesn't exist in any meaningful sense, certainly not in the nationwide vote, and definitely not in the swing state vote. This is one of the reasons, by the way, that you don't really see the third parties coalescing very strongly, other than in a few distinct districts, maybe a state district or a state house, state senate, or a couple of times we'll see third party governorships get in. But really, what we tend to see more is a coalescing among a different type of a voter, one which is, and this is quite interesting, socially conservative and financially liberal. And that type of voter actually is a swath where, if you look at Donald Trump's positions, if you look at his statements and where he's shifted the Republican Party, put it this way, Republicans and conservatives can move to the left on economics more so than they can on the social issues. And this certainly involves things like guns, abortion, etc. But Democrats, we've seen by and large, cannot move to the left on anything. And this is something that we've seen in a huge way. Look where the party was for the Republican side just a few years back when Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan were the standard bearers. They were campaigning on privatizing Social Security, getting rid of Medicare and Medicaid, doing completely gutting Obamacare, getting rid of all of these various programs, whereas Donald Trump comes in and he's talking about getting rid of taxes on Social Security payments, getting rid of taxes on tips, slashing all of these things, and would never even dream of touching any of them. This is why, by the way, you would see that President Trump was able to flip the Rust Belt in 2016, came very close in 2020. Of course, we're seeing the Rust Belt play a huge role in 2024 again. So it really is the question of, are you talking about social issues versus economic issues? Because on economic issues, we are seeing a lot more of this middle ground than you are on the traditional social issues, which is where people usually try to draw that dichotomy.
And Jack, I want to ask you again about the run up to Tuesday, because you were a former intelligence officer, and I'm wondering are there things that you worry about that the average person would not, that's sort of not in the public discourse routinely? I mean, there's lots of things we could point at, but what do you worry about when you think about, from your training and perspective? Are there things that we should all be thinking about that is going on in Jack Posobiec's head?
Well, certainly, I worry about a number of things. Obviously, we've got these politicians out there like Josh Shapiro, who's my current governor, who has his own issues where he wants to be the next president after Kamala Harris. So he's thinking about 28. He's got a political calculus and a game theory where he wants to potentially get in trouble. Potentially, he doesn't want the election to be run very well. Like, obviously, we've seen these fire bombings go on in Washington State. Free Gaza, I think, was painted on a number of the messages. And again, these issues about potential violence or potential unrest at the polls on election day, when you've got any mass situation like this, is always going to be an issue. That's why I'm always telling people, look, take the anxiety out of it. Don't, no black pills, no black pilling. That's something we always talk about. Black pilling is that embrace of despair, right? We want white pills. Yeah. And the best way to white pill yourself is to think, all right, something is going on. Here is the training. My training is I am going to pull out my phone. I am going to document this. I am going to talk to people that are nearby me that will be willing to witness this. And perhaps I'm going to have in my back pocket a phone number for one of the election centers from either President Trump or whoever, one of the state election centers, if that's what you're interested in, so that you will know how to get that information directly to a lawyer. And if, depending on where you are in the state, like if you're in Philadelphia, I know, for example, just because I've done elections there for a long time, that you could get a lawyer there within 30 minutes to adjudicate any situation that might be going on. So that knowledge of having a system that, like in the military, they train you to prepare for these events before they take place, so that when an emergency or when anything might happen that triggers that flight or fight response, rather than giving in to one or the other, you go into your training. You say, wait a minute, that response never takes place because you realize I've encountered something like this in training before. And when this scenario occurred, this is what I did, and it worked out very well. So we've got to think about that prior. Run through those scenarios in your head. What do you do if this happens? What do you do if Antifa shows up? What do you do if anyone nefarious shows up? What do you do if someone shows up with a fake badge that is walking around saying that they're an election official or an election official, like we saw in Pennsylvania here yesterday? Well, you would film them, and then you would go to get clarity later. You may be a lawyer yourself. If you're a lawyer, then please, by all means, conduct a legal investigation and know the statutes. But at the same time, if you don't get those videos out forward, or you give into those anxieties and you just start getting caught in that rabbit hole of, oh, I'm going to share everything that I see that looks like it's a problem, or I'm going to put that out in my family chat or whatever it is, then what you're really doing is you're just giving into anxiety rather than taking positive action to do something to better yourself and potentially even help yourself in the election.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Gentlemen, I'm going to let you go. I thank you all for coming in a little bit early. Congratulations on the book. I'm guessing you guys are already working on something else. What's your next book going to be about?
Oh, Joshua, I don't know if we can reveal that yet, can we? I don't know. We've got some plans. I'll say this. We've been discussing spirituality a little bit.
Okay, so we want you back soon. I have a show about spirituality, but just when we got his mic working perfectly, I want to thank you. But we will have you guys back soon.
But and spirituality, to your point, I've been saying for quite some time, we've been in a spiritual vacuum in this country for quite a while. However you want to conceive of that, everyone has got some spiritual malady, and certainly I deal with a lot on the addiction front. It's pretty wild. And going at the core, the source of that could be a worthy project. So have at it, gentlemen. I look forward to that.
Thank you. God bless.
Thank you, Dr.
All right, we'll see you soon. You got it. Joshua Lisek on X, Jack Posobiec on X, Posobiec, and Lisek, Lisec. We're going to have Kari Lake in here in a minute. Of course, she is a candidate in Arizona for the U.S. Senate. She is a former news anchor, and now she proudly calls herself a nightmare for the fake news. And I always get interested in talking to her about journalism and what happened to it. And it was so mysterious to me what we're calling journalism now, and that it still doesn't seem to correct course much. It'd be interesting to see if she sees any correction out there. But and Caleb, I assume she's nearby. Is that accurate?
She's on her way. She'll be in soon. It's a very busy time for her Elections are close. So
For everybody.
he's running from show to
I
show.
get
Get
it.
Jack back.
I understand it for everybody, and we appreciate her being here. Whatever we can get, we'll take it. So we'll take a little break ourselves and be right back after these words. The Wellness Company knows that taking charge of your family's health care is a top priority, and that is why they are constantly innovating to deliver the products and services to help you be rationally ready for an emergency. They've added a medical kit for kids to treat over 20 childhood illnesses: nausea, vomiting, allergies, asthma, bioterror, God forbid, croup, ear infections, lice, and more. And you can also order the kids kit with an EpiPen. Carefully sourced, great price. If there's a risk of anaphylaxis for your kids, you want that EpiPen. That can be in all kits, each customized for a different purpose. It comes, of course, with a telemedicine consultation and a guidebook, and you can replenish the meds up to 2 years after the date of purchase. So go to drdrew.com/2WC for 10% off any medical emergency kit or supplements. That is drdrew.com/TWC. I want to teach you about pharmacogenomic testing. This is changing the way we approach healthcare. By analyzing a patient's genetic profile, pharmacogenomics helps physicians personalize drug treatments for more effective results. First, it enhances medication efficacy by predicting how a patient will respond to a specific drug, reducing the trial and error process, especially in mental health care. For example, it can guide the choice of various medications to minimize side effects and improve outcomes. In the long run, pharmacogenomic testing leads to cost savings. It shortens the time to find the right treatment and avoids expensive side effects. It also supports more personalized care, helping physicians make better decisions and ensuring that treatments are tailored to each individual's unique genetic makeup. Test simply requires you to swab your cheek, then you send in the sample to our lab. Discover the power of personalized medicine with pharmacogenomic testing. Tailor your treatments based on your unique genetic makeup. Reduce trial and error, avoid side effects, find the most effective medication for you. Take control of your health today. Go to drdrew.com/checkgenetics. That is drdrew.com/checkgenetics. I'm excited to bring you a new product, a new supplement, Fatty. I take it. I make Susan take it. My whole family takes it. This comes out of, believe it or not, dolphin research. The Navy maintains a fleet of dolphins, and a brilliant veterinarian recognized that these dolphins sometimes developed a syndrome identical to our Alzheimer's disease. Those dolphins were deficient in a particular fatty acid. She replaced the fatty acid, and they didn't get the Alzheimer's. Humans have the same issue, and we are more deficient in this particular fatty acid than ever before. And a simple replacement of this fatty acid called C15 will help us prevent these syndromes. It's published in a recent journal called Metabolites. It's a new nutritional C15, pentadecanoic acid, it's called. The deficiency that we are developing for C15 creates something called the cellular fragility syndrome. This is the first nutritional deficiency syndrome to be discovered in 75 years and may be affecting us in many ways, and as many as 1 in 3 of us. This is an important breakthrough. Take advantage of it. Go to fatty15.com/Dr. Drew to receive 15% off a 90-day starter kit subscription, or use code Dr. Drew at checkout for that 15% off, or just go to our website, drdrew.com/fatty15.
Dr. Drew said the best way to quit drinking is by going cold turkey, and he's a doctor, so why would you question doctors?
Dr. Drew called me unfixable.
Just quickly, I want to talk about why the Juvent micro-impact platform is a game changer. We've all heard of impact loading. Bones grow, stay strong when they are exposed to certain levels of stress, like walking, running, even weight bearing. Juvent gives you that same benefit, but in a way that is gentle and safe for your joints, especially if you're dealing with issues like osteoporosis, arthritis, or even recovering from an injury. Juvent uses low magnitude, high frequency micro-impact technology. It might sound a bit technical, but here's what it means. When you stand on the platform, it safely delivers the tiny impacts that your body needs for optimal bone health. Of course, bones don't just hold you up. They play a role in the body's immune response, produce stem cells, key to tissue repair and regeneration. Juvent helps stimulate that process naturally so your body can heal itself without invasive treatments. Unlike other vibration plates out there, which can actually be dangerous, Juvent uses only a fraction of the energy while still delivering powerful health benefits. So if you're serious about optimizing your health and wellness, especially if you want to strengthen those bones and improve mobility. Check out the Juvent Micro Impact Platform. It's drdrew.com/Juvent. That is drdrew.com/JUVENT. And be sure to use the code DREW for $500 off the Juvent today. And right now, when you buy a Juvent Micro Impact Platform in the month of October, Juvent will donate one 8.5-liter British Berkefeld water purification system to a hurricane victim, and you will receive one at no charge as well. If you already have a British Berkefeld system or an equivalent, Juvent will donate 2 systems on your behalf. Just use the offer code Helen Relief at checkout alongside, I'm sorry, you're right, Helene Relief at checkout alongside code Drew for that $500 off. It is Kari Lake joining us, of course, the candidate for Arizona State Senator in Washington. Kari, welcome to the program.
Oh my goodness, it's good to see you, Dr. Drew, running for U.S. Senate in the great state of Arizona, State 48, as we call it. And we just jumped off the campaign trail to sit down with you. I said, I got to have some time with Dr. Drew, and thank you for having us.
I appreciate it. I was looking at some of our old conversations, and it's interesting how things change. How has your perspective changed on the political process going through all this? I mean, you were an anchor journalist and now candidate for Senate. How's it been?
You know, actually, a lot of the same skills. You know, I'm always, the beautiful thing about being a journalist is you're always learning and you're always talking to people and hearing their stories and learning about issues. And I've been constantly doing that. It's like being a lifelong student, which is a wonderful thing, wonderful opportunity. I think the way things have changed is for the people of this state, while we had an incredible movement that President Trump ushered in with the America First movement, MAGA, whatever you want to call it, back in 2016. And I think it even grew in 2020. Of course, COVID changed a lot of things and a lot of shenanigans were played. And 2020, we had a statewide similar MAGA movement here when I ran for governor. But what's incredible right now is I feel this movement has grown even bigger. It's moved beyond Republican, Democrat. We're not Republican Democrat anymore. We are Americanism versus communism. Some people might say socialism. I kind of think we've already taken a step further from that. And we're watching as Arizonans just come together, and I get Democrats come up to me and say, oh my gosh, we are voting for you and President Trump. Like our lives depend on it. We have independence. It's just, it's unifying. It's actually a big unifying movement right now.
When I hear you say that, I think about the infringements on personal liberties that have been suggested and perpetrated, particularly as it pertains to speech. And that is so mind-boggling to me, for that is a super clear line in the sand. And I'm guessing it's that sort of thing that is wearing people down, where they're just like, we can't have this anymore. It's got to stop.
It starts to get really scary when you're being censored. It starts to get really scary when you're watching the president, Joe Biden. I think he's still the president. I don't know. I don't know who's running the country, but is that Susan?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, she doesn't realize
Susan.
that she has headphones on. She doesn't realize how loud she is on my mic. It's like, I'm like, whoa.
I mean, we laugh about it, but we should be crying about it. We should. I mean, who's running our country right now? But Joe Biden coming out last night, I think it was last night, and calling Trump supporters, which is, I believe, well over half of the country. I actually think we're pushing on really, really big numbers that were garbage. I mean, listen, I know that not everybody in this state is voting for me, and I don't despise them or dislike them. As a matter of fact, I love the people of my state and of this country. I believe that the policies that President Trump, that myself, we're going to push are going to make everyone's lives better, and I don't want to disparage them.
You mean everyone who doesn't support you is not a Nazi or a Bolshevik or some delusional thing that people seem to be preoccupied with?
No, it's gotten crazy. And I don't sense that kind of feeling on the ground. I talk to more Arizonans than anybody. And what I sense from Arizonans is they're ready for the election to end. They're ready for the ads to end. I mean, I think just the ads on TV. You're a therapist. You're a psychiatrist and a psychologist. I don't know exactly what your title is.
I'm an internist addictionologist, but I worked in a psychiatric hospital as a physician for 30 years. So I'm very familiar with all that.
Election season always weighs on people. It's like a heaviness that we carry around. But this one in particular, the ads are very aggressive and ugly. You know,
Terrible.
I've had $100 million
Tiring.
in ads thrown at me. So I just met some kids today on the campaign trail. They came running up and hugging me. I'm so blessed that I love kids and they love me back. But one of them said, I don't like the TV ads when they say bad things about you. And I thought, wow, the kids even see this. And I think we
Yeah.
sometimes forget as we're talking and arguing and debating, more arguing than debating, unfortunately, our kids are listening. And
Oh, yes.
that can be very difficult for our children.
Yes, and we already told them to shelter in place, and they're going to kill their teacher and their grandma. We have destroyed those. Yeah, when they wake up and really start thinking for themselves, they're going to be angry, and I'm all for it. I can't wait for when that happens because they should be angry. But I want to read
I
something
think they are
that
waking
just
up.
came on. Yeah, I agree with you.
I think they are waking
from
up. Gen Z is.
Yeah, from CNN. This is kind of interesting. You mentioned, when you're elected to public office, you're supposed to be representing all the people, not, the garbage included, President Biden. And it's interesting that a pollster on CNN just said this. This was like an hour ago. This guy named is Frank Luntz, and he says, it's going to be huge, these garbage comments he made. This is not some comedian saying something stupid and offensive at a rally. And he goes on to say, Trump seized on this. The basket of deplorables was significant in 2016. I promise you this is going to drive Trump turnout. And I'm sure there's going to be ads as soon as tonight about the garbage comments. It really is a bridge too far, isn't it? I mean, what was he? Is he? Do you think this is I'm going to ask you this. This is kind of a silly speculation, but some of the things he says makes me wonder if he's trying to undermine the Kamala's presidency campaign.
I've heard that. I've seen some tweets to that effect. I'm not sure if he's that on top of it to be thinking that strategically. But this definitely didn't help. You're right. It's a lot different. A comedian makes a bad joke. It's a groaner, an offensive joke. We've all been there. I've been to comedy shows where I laughed 80% of the show, and there were some jokes that actually offended me. But I chalked it up as comedy. And when you don't laugh, it's kind of an indicator to that comedian. Maybe that's a joke worth pulling out of the set. Nobody liked it.
Yeah.
It's different from a comedian, from a man who is supposedly leading our country, representing all of us. And look, I'm going to represent the people of Arizona. I'm not going to agree with everybody ideologically, politically. We have different differences of opinion. But I certainly respect the people of this state. Ask my husband. We've been out where somebody, kind of not got in my face, but said, hey, I disagree with you on that. And I think you're wrong on something. I always try to go up and have a conversation with them, because I always think that starting a conversation is the first step toward wondering and finding out if you can see eye to eye on something. And when you can start to see eye to eye on one or two issues, then it's a lot easier to discuss those issues that you don't see eye to eye on. And it doesn't mean you're going to come to a consensus. It might just mean that you walk away where I respect a little bit of what you've said about that issue, and you respect a little bit about what I said, and we understand where we're coming from. And I'm hoping we can get there. I think we will get there, because I'm sensing the country is starting to gel and come together. We're watching as these corrupt individuals in Washington, D.C., who are fighting so hard against President Trump. I mean, Kamala Harris, in one of the most recent events that she did, I can't remember who she was being interviewed by, every time they would ask her something, she blamed it on President Trump. And I wanted to tap into the TV and say, just a little reminder, he has not been in office the past 4 years.
Right. It was Brett Baird, I think. It was that Brett Baird interview where he was everything.
What have you done? It's kind of like if your kids try to, you call your kids out on something they messed up, and they try to blame it on the dog ate my homework, or they blame it on their little sister or their big brother.
Yeah.
Eventually you have to stop and be held accountable for what you have done. And I think she had a couple of opportunities that she messed up on. And she could have said, when they asked her the other day, what would you have done differently? I mean, she's even admitted that the cost of things are too high. She's admitted that we need to make a change. But what she couldn't admit is that they did anything wrong. And actually, when you admit you've done something wrong, there's a way you show some humbleness there. And she failed to do that and missed an opportunity.
Yeah, there's so much opportunity for people to go, hey, I got that wrong. Sorry, I'm adjusting course. Here's how. That's how we're going to build trust in all of our institutions. My
She could have
profession,
blamed
public
Biden.
health, government. Yeah,
She could have just
exactly.
blamed
That's
Biden.
right. Exactly. Yeah, and then apologize. But to these points, as we hit the run up to your senatorial campaign and senatorial election, are there things you want to clarify, set straight? Are there issues still lingering on your campaign platform?
I feel really good about where we stand on the issues because I've seen the solutions that the America First group presents and suggests versus what the modern day Democrat Party. I don't even like to say Democrat Party because I have a lot of friends who are Democrats and they don't even subscribe to this nonsense that's being pushed. I think somebody's taken over the Democrat Party. But I look at what Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and my opponent Ruben Gallego have offered to America the past 3.5, almost 4 years versus what we had with President Trump. And I just believe deeply that the solutions offered by America First, they help all of us, as evidenced by the extremely low, historically low unemployment levels for Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, women, men, members of our tribal community were doing better under President Trump. I look at how much more safe our border was. I've covered the border for 30 years. We'd never had a safe border before until President Trump came on the scene. So I just look at results, and whether you love the person, the personality, or you don't, you have to admit we had better results under President Trump. So I'm happy about that. I'm not a perfect person. I've never said I was, and I don't know. Maybe I rubbed some people the wrong way. That's a possibility. I think none of us are perfect, and I want to have the vote of every Arizonan, and I want them to know that I'm only in this because I care about this state. Believe me, nobody gets into this for the fun of it. It's grueling. I've had $100 million in ads. I've watched as the media that I used to work in, Dr. Drew, has attacked me relentlessly. Every single day it's negative, tearing me down. But I don't care about all that.
Why? These are former peers and things. What is it? Is it that you attacked them for being the fake news? They didn't like that?
I believe it's because there's a lot of very, very far left people in the media. It makes me laugh when people go, "Are you going to be able to work with Democrats?" And I laugh and I say, well, I did work in the media. 98% of the media is Democrat. I worked with them every day, and frankly got along with the people in the media. I just believe politically they're so head in the sand when it comes to they have to push for the Democrat Party because they have pushed for that the whole time, and they don't want to relent and say, well, maybe we were wrong on a couple of things. I'm not saying that everything that President Trump did he got right, perfectly right. That first term was difficult for him being an outsider. He brought people in. He's even admitted it recently that he brought some people in and surrounded himself with some people who might not have been the best fit. But, you're walking into a new situation as an outsider. You don't know who's who. You're assuming the people in your own party are going to be there with you. And he found out the hard way that there's a lot of snakes in that swamp. I'm not saying I'm right on everything, but I always want to learn and grow, and I certainly want to do the right thing by the people of this state.
Yeah. What happened to your profession? I talked to Cheryl Atkinson a couple of days ago, and she gave me faith. Okay, there are investigative journalists out there. I come upon them, but they're not working in the day in, day out media sphere. And the ones that are there are self-righteous and have an irrational certitude about everything they're saying. It's the weirdest thing. I've never seen anything like this. Do you have a theory about what's happened? Is it just the business forces on journalism and media?
I think for the corporate media, the legacy media, the 5 or 6 corporations that control the vast majority of the media, there's people who are working for a paycheck. They've been contributing to their 401k. Maybe they still have a pension, and to walk away from that is scary. I walked away from that. It is scary. I walked away from a 7-figure contract and said, I'm not going to be a propagandist. I signed up to be a journalist, so I know it's scary. But I also believe that they're starting to see at the end of the road that this is not going to go well. I've been saying it for a long time, Drew, that I believe we've been too willy-nilly giving away these FCC licenses. Those things are gold. They're like the biggest gold bar you can have if you're in media. Think of CBS recently, and President Trump called them out, and he was right to do so. And other journalists, I think Cheryl has even called them out. They took an interview with Kamala Harris, and they edited it to make her look better. Do you think for one second that they would have edited an interview with President Trump to make him look better? I think they might have edited it to make him look worse, but not better. And that's completely unethical, but more so than that it's actually election interference.
Right. And Kari,
so we're giving them an FCC
what,
license.
You will explain what that means, because I don't think people really understand that they're supposed to be providing a public surface of news, not opinion, news.
Yep.
And that they've lost that. And you could easily justify, as you're sort of tilting at, taking those privileges away.
An FCC license it's a free. It allows you to broadcast over the free media, which is the basic channels that everybody has access to. And I believe it was put in place, if I'm right, to be able to, if there were a serious emergency, where the government could then interrupt. We've all seen those where they do an emergency test of the broadcast system, right? Where they kind of break into programming. We've seen those. We're in the middle of watching something, and all of a sudden they're doing an emergency test. That's really what our airwaves are for, to get information out to the people if there's ever a serious emergency. Thankfully, that's very rare. But we have the airwaves. We want to maintain them. We want them up and running where people are there and we can get information to them in case of an emergency. And when there's not an emergency, we give those FCC licenses out to somebody who's going to behave responsibly and put out programming. I find that word interesting, programming. Sometimes you're wondering if they are trying to program us. And so it allows various networks, Fox, CBS, ABC, NBC, PBS, to put out information. And sometimes it's fun entertainment. It might be, American Idol. It might be an NFL football game. This is why it's so valuable, by the way. These networks make a fortune selling advertising when there's a big NFL game or an NBA game or a big show that they have. So they're making a fortune off of these licenses. And I can tell you, after working for 30 years in broadcasting, they value that license. It allows them to do business. If somebody makes a complaint about them, profanity on the airwaves, things like that, they can get a hit or strike against them, and there's a shot they could lose their FCC license. So they never, ever, ever want to do anything that rocks the boat, that would take away their FCC license. Well, let me tell you, these corporate media giants have done a lot to rock the boat. They've literally lied to the people of this country over the last several years. They've done a smear campaign against President Trump. They have interfered in elections. They've withheld information that was pertinent and important to our health when it came to their coverage of COVID. And I believe we need to call these heads of these corporate media giants in front of Congress and say, why did you do this? Who was behind it? Did you know you were putting out false information? Did you know? In some ways, I think they've defrauded the public by lying to us. So why are we just willy-nilly handing these out? Because we have all along. I think it's time we re-examine how we give out these FCC licenses and re-examine it. They don't even let President Trump on some of these networks. For many years and months, they took his family off. They didn't want to put his, whenever they did have an interview with him, it was cut and pasted to make him look terrible. They do the same thing to me. And all we want is a free and fair press. We're not getting that right now. We need to push to make sure we have that once again.
Yeah, Kari, I read the policy from the FCC, the Federal Trade Commission, Federal Communication Commission. Policies against news distortion in TV and radio broadcast applies to deliberate distortion of significant news events. And this whole thing, what you're describing, reminds me of the cozy relationship between the FDA and the pharma companies. It makes me wonder if there's some distorting influence here between the business world and the FCC. And that's something maybe Robert F. Kennedy, if he gets in there, can look at as well. In addition to making us healthy, he can make our news and information healthy as well.
I've heard from people who are insiders that when they started advertising big pharma on these networks, it was many times as a way, because you see these ads and you go, who would buy that drug when they're telling you these are the 50 different side effects and you're homicidal, it'll make you suicidal, it'll give you, kidney failure. And you're like, who would take that? But it's really a way for big pharma. I've heard many insiders and whistleblowers say those ads are a way for big pharma to kind of pay back and say thank you to the broadcast media for not blowing the whistle, not covering them with scrutiny. And I think we need to examine that as well. These ads that are handing over, basically hand over fist, hundreds of millions of dollars to the corporate media from the corporate big pharma. It's just a way of kind of shifting money around.
Yeah, I've heard similar speculation because you're like, how many people are taking Skyrizi that they're going to make profit from these expensive commercials that are a minute and a half in prime time? And I've heard that no, that's not the intent. The intent is to have control over those organizations and to, as you say,
and basically say, hey,
if you're going to run
if you're going to run an ad against this drug we're putting out, then that $10 million ad buy we bought for that first quarter, that's going to go away. And it's pretty scary. I remember once I was at a hotel, we were on a trip. I think we were doing a fundraising trip, and we were sitting there waiting in the hotel lobby to take off. And I saw a whole segment, I think it was like Good Morning America or something like that, and childhood depression. And they did a whole thing and they were interviewing people. Yeah. And then the segment ended and they said, this segment was brought to you by, and they named the drug company. And then they did 2 ads on their drug, to treat childhood depression. And I thought, that seems like a conflict of interest, doesn't it? I mean, where are the ethics here?
Something you've been asking. When I first found you, it was your skill in sort of addressing the distortions in your colleagues and how they approached you and how the questions they asked and how you could tell they were going to distort everything. And I just love that. And they seem to be.
They seem to be totally losing control right now, though. No, they've definitely been doing that. But have you noticed, Dr. Drew, in the past even month, 3 or 4 weeks, it seems to be spiraling into a level of almost hysteria from some of these people, as if they know the jig is up.
No, the hysteria, there's 2 things I've noticed. One is hysteria with delusional thought processes. I mean, frankly, delusional thinking. I mean, they're unassailable. They can't be convinced out of these Nazis are coming to get them. That's something that psychotic patients think about. That's not what a normal person thinks about. Number one. And number 2, they've become inconsolable, and they just have fallen into this sort of pit that I'm really worried about. Actually, I don't like that I love Americans. I'm a moderate. I like both sides. I want people to thrive. That's all I really care about. But the mental health distortions, the hysteria, exactly what you're talking about, is become of actual concern, clinically of concern to me. And God knows we have a youth crisis in mental health that we've created through COVID and other things. But listen, I know you're very, very busy. I want to get you back out on the campaign trail. We appreciate it always when you spend some time with us, and we look forward to celebrating you and your victory coming forward.
Thank you. And we're going to work hard. I really mean this, and I'm glad you mentioned you're a moderate. I know they called me an extremist and all these. I'm really not. I'm just someone who likes to solve problems. I believe we can solve these problems. I believe we're going to come together as Americans. I want to frankly help save our kiddos, these young people. I just talked to a high schooler and she said, can you please help us? She goes, I don't feel like I learned anything in high school except division and confusion. And I think we're going to have some healing to do with this young generation. And I'm looking forward to helping get us through that. So you might be called upon to help us with that, Dr. Drew. We're going to need your help.
Count on me. I'm there.
All right.
Kari Lake, get her at KariLake.com. Kari Lake on X. Good luck, Kari. Nice to talk to you.
Thank you.
And coming up for us, Susan, your show is tomorrow if you want to jump on mic and talk about it. It's Halloween. Naomi Wolf and Cindy Kaza is one of your exceptional talents.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. That's what you have to say about it?
Caleb won't put me on the screen.
No, your mic is off.
No, it's on now.
Okay.
Can you show my face?
I
Taylor?
don't know. Well, we got the big.
Maybe he fell
first. There we
asleep.
go. There you are. No, he was putting the schedule up.
No,
and-
I know, but can I sell my show?
Mhm.
Okay, this is a big one, everybody. It's Halloween, and that's a big deal for psychic mediums. Tomorrow we have Naomi Wolf. We have 2 psychic mediums, one who is from the Holzer Files, medium Cindy Kaza. She is a well-known psychic medium on the Travel Channel, and also Lauren Rainbow, who they work together. It's going to be such a great show because Naomi has agreed to be on the show with us and some other great casts. So, I'd love to see you there tomorrow, and thank you for
at
watching.
2:00 Eastern, 11
We're going on
o'clock.
at an earlier time. It's going to be 2 p.m. so you can get out to the trick-or-treaters.
So
This is
Caleb can
Eastern.
go out. So
it's
Caleb can go.
11
Yeah.
Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. And also, just, tune in, set your alarms. You're going to really love it. It'll be fun.
Do you have pictures of what the family's going out as tomorrow?
Not quite yet, but I'm going to have it soon. We're taking some tonight,
All right.
so we'll get them up soon.
Excellent.
Oh, cute. And
Okay.
also, what was the other thing I wanted to tell everybody? I can't remember. Anyways, we'll see you tomorrow.
All right, and I will put up the schedule.
We have like 60,000 people watching on X right now. So
Oh.
I just wanted to say hi to everybody on X. Thank you for watching and joining the broadcast, as well as Rumble and YouTube and Facebook. We really, really appreciate your viewership.
Yeah, we do indeed. And if there's things people you'd like me to talk to, like to hear from, topics, whatever, please contact at drdrew.com. Go ahead and bring us up there, and we'll try to keep up with it. And you'll see the guests coming up here right now. Let's put that list up, Caleb.
Okay, let's go back to your
This
stuff.
is what Susan was being pushed off camera to show. Let's see if we can get that up. I know we have Salty Cracker coming in right after the election. We have Jillian Michaels coming in. Jimmy Dore, I have a special thing with him next Friday the 8th. So keep an eye out for that. Tyler Fisher got booked. Of course, he's
Woke
got
Jordan
his ass in
Peterson.
a sling. We got
He
what?
does he plays the character of woke Jordan Peterson. Anyone, if you've
does-
been on the internet, you'll know that. Yeah, who he is.
Well, and he does a mean Trump, and he got his ass in a sling with Delta Airline for some stuff, and we thought we already got Tyler in here. Let's support him. And Remy Daily K will be back again. He's always great. He's a human trafficking expert. He's a special forces
He's doing
guy.
a master class or something like that.
Excellent.
Do you know what that is?
Yes, I don't know what the topic is, but he essentially teaches, and he's got
Probably human trafficking.
it might be around intelligence. He's an intelligence officer, and he can learn how to sort of I don't know. We'll see what he has to say. Again, Salty Cracker should be fun, and you can do, of course, follow updates at Ask Dr. Drew. Stay safe, everybody. Take it easy. Enjoy Halloween. It's gonna be all right. We're gonna make it through this.
70,000 on it.
We appreciate X. We love you guys. And Caleb, anything else from your standpoint?
Yeah,
tomorrow
I
again,
just-
early 2:00 for Susan. Go ahead.
I just want to remind everyone of the wise words of our president. Please forgive him, for he not knoweth what he said. And on that, I'd like to leave you.
That is something that Caleb just drummed up during the show. That is in response to President Biden talking about the human garbage that I think he was alleging supports former President Trump. And let me be clear about, I'm going to say this. I was going to say this to Kari, but I saved it for the end here. Tony Hinchcliffe is somebody I know very well. He's an insult comic. That's what he does. And if you don't know that Puerto Rico has an issue with landfill, you would know he was poking at that. There you go. Is that for me too? Or is that not just for
It's
for
like one of
President
my new
Biden?
favorites. I'm gonna start replying to people's comments on all the time, and I'm just gonna drop in this meme just constantly. He not knoweth what he said. It's so profound.
Well, I believe somebody, Jesus of Nazareth, is quoted as having said something, if not exactly that, something very similar. But again, good. Forgiveness is a great asset, as is gratitude, as is humility. These are all things we can cultivate. Posobiec was saying with Joshua Lysek that they're going to get a book on this. I look forward to that. It's an important topic. If you guys have issues or people you want me to talk to in that zone, contact drdrew.com. And do check out our supporter site. We really stand behind some of these products that we have the great privilege.
drdrew.com/sponsors.
There you go. And we will see you tomorrow at 2 o'clock Eastern, 11 o'clock Pacific. Have a great Halloween, everybody. Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help.